Hello Android users, I wanted to take this time to go over update 1.0.0. So if you go to the Google Play Store, it should be available for download as of last night sometime. Here you can see in the About section in the settings, my version already installed onto the device. Let's go over the key features from this release. So the first thing that you'll see in the help section, there's going to be a lot of additions. So elevation is now going to be an added topic. Secondary wind effect, that's the ball getting pushed after it lands, after the wind has affected it. Since our ring guide and no ring tool uses any approximation past the landing point, you need to consider wind effect on your own. So learning a little bit more about that topic will be easier by using these brief summaries in addition to using my YouTube content, especially some of the advanced topics. So let's take a look at, every feature here in the help has been updated. So you'll see here's the new wind directional input that I'm going to additionally go over as well. There shouldn't be anything new in the bag section, as well as the settings should be relatively similar, but I will go over just one minor change there. But here's the additional resources where you can also find another key videos. There is one in here as well for secondary wind effect that you can see, but there's also, a large amount of other useful resources that you can use. So let's go to the settings real quick. You're going to see a little info button if you're having problems setting up anything. These are brief tutorials about 1 minute in length each that will go over actually physically doing each one of these things in the game and changing these. And pretty much why you change these is to have the grid lines that you can already see on my screen, is just to use as kind of a ring counting aid, and also in the top corner to align with my wind alignment. Similarly, you will see a new wind directional input here. Keeping it in this position will essentially disable it, and you will just get all the old ring values that you used to get. However, once you input a new wind, you will see the option to open it just by tapping it, and you will see a directional pad open up with 8 directions. When you actually use this, you're going to see that the ring values intensify as you circle through and span the different values. So each direction is going to either intensify or keep a very similar ring value based on the wind direction at hand. What you're going to see is this is much more accurate than anything that you've ever used before. With that being said, it's going to change the way you need to play the game just slightly. Because what used to happen is even if it was a flat hole and you'd get a tailwind, you'd have to do an overplay. Especially on par 3s where you might be at a longer distance, say, towards max sniper, for example. And you'd have to say do a 30 or 40, 50% overplay because you have such a large tailwind at your back. Our new ring model with the new wind directional input factors in that for you, so you won't have to calculate that. You do still need to account for elevation. If you need more help on that topic, I do suggest reading over that new help section, as it does give you identifiers to help you figure out what elevation looks like. However, your new elevations are going to be very, very minimal. Okay, most elevations are going to be 5 or 10%, maybe 15. We're talking about kind of like a graded scale here. So how many holes in the game have more than a 10 to 15 max grade in them? It's very, very few. We're talking about obviously downhill holes at that point. So all holes in the game should have very little actual elevation. What you've been using in the past has just been overplay values. So what we're trying to do is provide you with better ring data so you don't have to ever do those overplays ever again. And with my new wind model, it is not perfect right now, but it is very good for tours 7 through 10. So if you are currently in those tours, it's going to be very good for tour 11, tour 12, pretty good for tours 1 to 4. But in terms of tour 7 to 10, it's going to be pretty excellent as an actual accuracy guide as of now. There is some minor tweaks that's going to be happening. I've already been working on, coming up with better data for you guys, and we are both working on, figuring out a way to implement it into making the changes here in our coding. And it will be available in the near future. But for now, it is already in a very good state where you'll want to see it. If you're not in the Lob Learner Burn Facebook group, which when I go to Facebook group and search for Learner Burn, you will see my post that I did yesterday for the iOS release, which we just launched on. You will see a lot of explanation on this topic in great detail. So here's the new wind input model, and I said all this text. So if you want to either, I can just kind of scroll through this rather slowly real quick, just so you can kind of, because there's going to be a lot to learn on this topic. It's a relatively new thing, and it's going to kind of change the way you need to play elevation on holes, because you're no longer going to have to do ridiculous overplays. Everything you'll do is more natural. So give that a look. If you're not in this group and want to be a part of it, we are a very learn-based community. Everything pretty much is dedicated to learning the game better and trying to stay away from unnecessary arguments and group drama. So here you can see more about that feature. If you choose to read that, which I highly suggest, it's going to go over and really kind of change the way that your thinking needs to be. But again, as I mentioned, our ring program is going to do a lot of the hard work for you. You'll just have to use the wind directional input. Going to the help section and actually reading about the elevation and what to identify for will actually make your life a lot easier, because you'll see what uphill looks like, you'll see what downhill looks like, and for the most part you'll be able to stick to those small values and be able to easily get very good approximations. Aside from that, let's talk about the rough iron and the sand wedge. Every club, whether it's Nirvana, Razor, Amazon, even if it's in the sand wedges, Malibu, Spitfire, Sand Lizard, whatever you're using, every ring value at all levels has been updated to a better, more accurate model. Now, I went over this topic pretty briefly in my original posts. Pretty much what I've noticed is there's a lot of depression from collecting data to get you guys these new values, which are the best in the best that I've seen. No charts that I've seen have these values or very close to the rough iron and sand wedge values, is what I essentially built by hand by studying videos of my shots and just basically analyzing, breaking them down, counting the little pixels on the screen, stuff like that. And what I've came up with my analysis is that the ring data that you're getting is now going to be pretty much spot on. One of the things that you're going to want to keep in mind, though, which I noticed, was you'll see a lot of times certain rough patches might be well below the fairway or well above the fairway. And similarly with the sand wedge, with the sand bunkers, you'll see a lot of them in depressions and actually at much lower ground. So I was very surprised when analyzing the game and just hitting bunker shots, how many bunker shots are actually in lower ground, which means that you might have a lot of holes that are uphill. So again, going to the elevation in the tutorial might give you a little bit better guidance as to what to look for elevation, because these shots in particular might need to be used for elevation in the future for you to actually get very good data here. Because one of the reasons that I've realized that some of the old data that we had was wrong was because of how many bunker shots were actually in like a low depression where you're shooting to an uphill target towards the green. So what you were seeing is a lot of under ring adjustments. And I was surprised with how many holes that were actually uphill. It was almost like half the bunker shots I was doing were actually up to an elevated target. So with that in mind, you might have to use the slider a -10, a -15% at times. Probably should never need more than a -20 in very, very few settings, but it could be something that you need to consider. Similarly, there also could be the potential for a downhill, but it would probably not be very much. Okay, I would expect the uphill to be a little bit more of an influence than downhill will be, because most times you're going to be at a very low depression, so it's hard to go to a lower depression. Usually you'll see the bunker lip coming up high and then it dropping back down. There might be very small overplays that need to be done. I would say, 5 or 10% and very, very minimal times that you'll need to make that. So hopefully you find that information useful. Feel free to, play this back and just try to absorb a lot of that information. Similarly, you can view the help section, try to read through that. If you're in the Learn or Burn group, as I mentioned, reading through my iOS announcement post there that I kind of scrolled through in full detail, and then maybe coming back to this video, putting it all together might make things a lot more sense. But I did want to just talk about briefly one additional feature that we added. Here you see the Wind Assist launch. And you guys know, let's for instance, I'm just going to go ahead, I'm going to close down the notebook app here. You guys know already that to launch the Wind Assist, we just tap on the Wind Assist button. There's a new double tap feature. When you double tap, you're going to go into, this is actually the iOS tool. So we've essentially built this on the iOS and we're allowing Android users to use it because there's no complications with running their software on the Android platform. However, the converse of that is not true. There's nothing that I can do on the Android side that I can run on the iOS. However, Android is capable of mirroring the software. So here you can see what the new tool looks like. If you like it and you use your Android as a secondary device, I want to highly recommend that you kind of do this. Since there's more room to work with, we were able to improve upon the Android tool in terms of functionality. Now you can still use your grid in relation with this. So let's just say I double click and I also single click. So I kind of have both. After I have the single click done, you can see I still can get my grid to pop up. So there's no interference. You can use both together or you can use one at a time. But similarly, you'll see this whole on-page interface, there's a lot more that we could kind of build in. So you'll see a lot more functionality to it, like individual resets, where you can only reset one thing as opposed to all of them, for instance. But there's also a master reset up at the top there. You'll also see, all your bags import here. And, switching between clubs is much easier because we could build in this function because we had more room to do so. So, hopefully you find all these new features on update 1.0.0 to your liking. Let me know what you guys think and be on the lookout for future updates to come. Good luck, all.